Matt, can you guys see it? Thumbs up or just nods and heads? Yeah. Can you guys see
yes,
this?
Yep, got that.
Right. Good. We're in. Nice one.
Yep.
So, welcome, folks. Really appreciate you engaging with this, because it's, as you'll see only in a few minutes' time, this is really, really crucial that we do this, and it's getting more and more important by the week. At the moment, the us guys that are out there on the water, near the water, with some knowledge, even if it's not very much knowledge. I mean, like saying, Matt, just getting back into it. Knowledge is key in this, I think, and being able to pass on that knowledge to others in a positive way is really important. So thanks for coming. I'm Pete Catterall. I work for Canoe. I'm the coaching and development manager, so I look after everything to do with all the qualifications, leadership awards, the safety of everything we do sort of falls across my desk, my laptop as well as the wider development of the sport. We are trying to get more people into the sport, and at the moment I don't think that's an issue. We're getting lots and lots of people into the sport. It's enormous, and we'll go into that in a minute. And then my co-host for the evening, Alice, do you want to jump on and introduce yourself, because it's better than me doing it?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. My name's Alice. I work for the RNLI's water safety team within Wales and West region, and sort of based in Abu Dhabi, paddler, and sort of outdoor background before I took up a full-time role with the RNLI.
Yeah, and you've been a coxswain and all sorts, haven't you? So you're fully embedded, aren't you, in there?
Yeah, I'm a helm on our station. I don't know why they do the difference between coxswain on an all-weather and helm on an ILB inshore lifeboat, but yeah, it's what it is.
Yeah,
same command position, basically.
Yeah, so that's us too, and we're running it, but you guys have got lots of experience, and you all have views on things and things that maybe we could do in different ways. So don't see this as you guys have got to sit there and listen and do as we say or anything like that. We're finding our way with what the answer is to help solve the problem that we've got at the moment, and it is a good problem. We've got loads of people going paddling. It's a good problem to have, rather than no one ever goes paddling. This is a great problem to have, but it's causing other problems, and that's what we're going to go into tonight. So the aim of this session is all we're trying to do is keep people safe, and about being able to give good basic safety advice to those who don't really see it in other ways. So the people that will go and buy a kayak or a SUP or something from Aldi, and they don't engage with Canoe Wales or British Canoeing or Water Skills Academy or any of these other things to go, this is a real, you could get into some real adventure here, and they don't see the messaging that goes out anywhere else. So this is why we're trying to engage the community and go, well, if they don't come to us, we're always out on the water in different ways, and we're stood on beaches, and we quite often see people and we think, you don't want to go there, mate, you don't want to go out today. And it's about how do we have that conversation that means we're helping them stay safe, but we're not being the paddling police going, you can't go. But it also puts out I'll come back to that. It puts out that little knot in your belly when you go, I wish I'd said something. I wish I'd gone over there and gone, are you sure you want to go out today in this offshore wind? Are you sure you want to go this part of the coast? And I've gone and had these conversations with people, but I've also gone home going, I really wish I'd said something to them. I hope they make it back. I hope I don't watch the news tomorrow morning and go, and I realise that's the person I could have said something, because I've got some more expertise than them. I'd rather they told me where to go and I sleep easy at night, rather than I didn't want to offend someone and that's going to live with me forever if I didn't go and do something. So that's what tonight's about, is about how we have that conversation, and we're going to get some advice from Alice on how to do that, and some ways of doing it without falling into pitfalls. But as always, we're humans, we don't always get it right, and we don't always get received in a way that we were hoping to be received. I've definitely been told where to stick my advice, but equally I've been thanked quite openly by people that go, oh yeah, we wouldn't have come back if you hadn't said something, or thanks for that, I was going to go right but I should have gone left, and yeah, I've got it right and I've got it wrong. So that's what this is all about. Alice, do you want to talk through this just to bring it home of this is happening now? We updated our PowerPoint this morning. So Alice, do you want to just talk us through the last few days, because it's brilliant.
Yeah, it with hot weather seems to come kind of like an exponential increase for our crews around the coast in responding to incidents. And I've just been staggered over recent years, months, and certainly this weekend at the number of incidents that have gone on. This one really sticks out. So on Monday morning, I came in to open up my email and find out about this particular incident and others. But St David's went out over the weekend and rescued a group of 16 paddleboarders who fortunately were were okay at the time. They didn't realise where the situation that they were in until help was there, and then they kind of like went, oh, okay, thanks very much. And it was timely that it was spotted and so on. But yeah, in over the weekend, you know, we've had at least half a dozen lifeboats out that I'm aware of, 2 paddling incidents, Llandudno, Pwllheli, St David's here, Tenby, just to name, Beaumaris, just to name but a few. So yeah, it's a massive problem. It's increasing, and yeah, this is part of our efforts to try and do something about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's staggering. Just what you were saying before we logged in tonight about the amount of shouts that are going out, and we've got the hottest weather to come. So
yeah, and summer holiday. Thanks. And summer holidays, where naturally people are going to be heading to the coast with their families on holidays. You know, potentially places they don't know, and you know, with those new toys that they've bought for their holidays.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it is brilliant. It's brilliant. I love the fact people are going out and having adventures in the outdoors. It's great. I wouldn't want it any other way. But it's getting serious now. It really is. You know, and we know we had a series of fatalities in one incident down in South Wales last year, and we just want to. We don't want that to happen. We want people coming back, and we want people being in the sport forever. And we don't want them having, you know, how many of these 16 that are on this boat have been put off for life because of one incident, and they're now not, you know, they're going to do something different now because that was too much. It doesn't need to be. There's ways of educating people and getting that information out there. So like I say, our aim is about preventing it before. So it's about seeing what are the behaviours that we see before people go on the water. So it's an offshore wind that people are really big offshore wind. It's blowing them out to sea or out across the lake, and you're there pumping up their sups. For me, I go, oh, what are they doing? They're still thinking of going out, and it's a day where I would keep my sup on my roof or my kayak in the van. Those sort of things. So like I say, it's about helping us not have that wish I'd said something feeling, helping to educate. It's not just coastal. I was talking to the guys at Bala Lake a few weeks ago, and they regularly will go and pick up people that have nothing to do with them, that just happen to be on the lake that they run a hire session on. They'll regularly go down in the powerboat and pull people back. They'll regularly see people walking back along the road with an inflatable something, could be a kayak, could be a canoe, might even be a crocodile, under their arm, because it looks calm at the coast, right on the shore. It looks calm. It's an offshore wind, so there's no waves crashing on. And no matter how many times they say in 500 meters time those waves are a foot tall and you're not going to get back, they don't listen. So it's not just coastal, and it's about us being the best ambassadors for our sport. So like I say, it's not being the police, it's not trying to tell people they can't, it's just going, are you sure? Could you go somewhere else? Why don't you go and do the SUP Safer course, which has now been released, which is a 4-hour training course on SUP safety, how to get on and off the board, how to understand wind, how to understand tide. It's 4 hours of your life for a lifetime of paddle sport, if they do that. And there's Paddle Safer, SUP Safer. Again, it's out there, but people don't know it's there. So this is what we're recruiting all of you for tonight. Remember, this is the second session. We've had 30 up. I think it was about 30 altogether now, isn't it? Or 30 something altogether go through, which is great, from all over Wales, and Scotland have also now I think they've actually copied this PowerPoint, and they're running the same thing in Scotland. England, I think, are doing the same. So we're luckily Canoe Wales, we're leading the way on this one, mainly thanks to us, because I think it was their idea. And we're just saying it was us, and Canoe Wales, it's all us. So you guys, and Rob, you can put in the chat if you want, but what would I gave a clue there, you know, it's an offshore wind and someone's still pumping up their paddleboard. But what were the things that draw you to somebody that makes you go, I'm not sure about them doing what they're doing? What are the clues? What things do you see? Matt, you can shout out. Rob, you can put in the chat if you've got any ideas. And Alice.
Yeah, I think it would. I think it would just be those kind of conditions. But I think a lot of the time you can just kind of get a bit carried away with, like you said, you bought this new SUP or this new kayak, and you're on holiday with your kids and your family, and you just want to get out. And I think a lot of it is probably common sense. It is just kind of looking at what the conditions are, and like you said, strong winds in pretty much any direction would be troublesome, but particularly offshore, and the swell and the tide and all that kind of stuff. But I just think people don't really think. I think for me, if there was somebody that was going to go out with like kids or something like that,
yeah,
I think if I saw quite a, you know, the waves were quite big, there was quite a lot of swell, I think that for me would be kind of, you know, the one time where, like I said, especially if a group of people had young children with them, would be a time when you think like this I don't think this is a very good idea. And then like you said, it is just about approaching those people. So I think that would be the thing for me, would be if there was a group of young children as well. Would probably make my ears prick up, if you like.
Yeah, I think you're right on all of those counts. It's funny, isn't it? The kids thing always comes in. People going, "Oh, there's kids." I think you're right. That is something that makes us go, "That's not acceptable," because whoever those adults are, potentially they're the ones who are putting those kids in danger. So we go, "You shouldn't be doing that, mate." But if it's an adult, why would we not step in for an adult? Yeah. You know, there are barriers. It's a weird thing, isn't it? I find it uncomfortable talking to them, especially if it's, you know, a parent going, you know, you're about to kill your children. And I'll share one of mine. I was at just checking, somebody just messaged me. No, they're not trying to get in. That's okay. I was at, if you know it, in North Wales, which is where I'm based, from Anglesey, Porthdaffach. If you go right out of there, you go around the Stacks, which is a really committing, probably 10 or 15 kilometres, nowhere else to get out. You've got big tidal overfalls. You're going to have an exciting day. And I just approaching the sort of no turning back point was a sit on top with a father, two toddlers, no buoyancy aids on, sat on a sit on top heading towards a place called Penryn, which you can get 6, 8, 10-foot waves probably and more there. And they were heading towards it. And the guy just couldn't understand why I was telling him he shouldn't go any further, to the point I had to get him out on the rocks and show him what I was talking about around the corner. And then I had to tow him all the way back pretty much to Porthdaffach, where he made me promise I wouldn't tell his wife that was on the beach that he got into that trouble. And you know, it got to the point where I said to him, I went, if you don't listen to me, I'm just going to call the Coast Guard now. But by the time they get here, there's going to be 3 bodies floating around. It got that honest with him, because that's what was going to happen. They had no chance, especially the 2 children. They were tiny, and but it was a day where I can totally say you've ended up here. It was a day like today, not a breath of wind, but the tide's moving really fast, and it's that they didn't know where they were. If they'd gone left out of Porthdaffach, they would have had a lovely day, and they would have been able to stop it. I can see Rob nodding, so Rob obviously knows this area. Yeah, they would have had a lovely day, and they would have gone from different beach to different beach. They could have fallen in and swum and had a lovely time. But they didn't. They probably went, that looks really busy. There's loads of people there. We'll go this way. Look, no one's gone this way. We'll explore here. And that's full on. I would imagine that's what led to that decision making, rather than, this is really exciting around here. Let's go, kids. We might make it back, we might not. Let's try. I don't think that was in their range. And there's, you know, I've got plenty of other less dramatic examples where you're going, are you sure? Are you sure you want to do that? And I talked to, when I used to work at Plaster Brennan, a big outdoor centre up here, and I talked to my climbing colleagues, and they would have the same thing on the rock. They'd be going, these guys haven't got a clue what they're doing. Like they've clearly set out with the wrong equipment on the wrong day. and so it's not just paddling. It's highlighted at the moment with paddling because there's just so many, but it's not just paddlers. Is that all right, Rob? Are you getting all this? I like you on mute. Yeah, cool. And so, let me come on. Yeah, it's things like this, isn't it? Like you say, toddlers. Look at this. This is a picture. There's a little kid in a buoyancy aid. Mum and dad, I'm assuming, no buoyancy aids. Paddlers in an inflatable, no buoyancy aids. Whereas the sea kayakers, they've got the kit. It's just what jumps out at you, and no buoyancy aids in a SUP is a bad idea. We've seen leashes snap. We've seen leashes come off. People can't get back on a board, so they have to float. We've seen it. We've done all the testing. We know exactly what it shows. Put a buoyancy aid on, but it doesn't get sold with one, does it? It gets sold with a leash and a paddle. So people are reluctant to buy. So it's that education, and that's something we are working on as well with a couple of retailers, trying to help give them the right message. So sell a package of stuff, sell the right information, because they're just seeing lots of pound notes at the moment, these guys in some places. We know the reason that we're getting more call outs, we're getting more incidents, that participation is massive at the moment. I used to work in 2019, I started a job at British Canoeing, and during lockdown we went from, I think it was it 35,000 members. They're now at 90 something thousand members, and I worked for Canoe Wales. We were at 2,500, nearly 3,000 members, and we've got over 5,000 members now, and most of that period no one's been allowed to do anything. So there's been a massive spike in people going, but I want to do something, I want to get on the water. Add to that, SUP and inflatable kayaks are relatively cheap, but also really accessible. You can put it in your car, you can put it in a backpack, you can take it to the beach. It's just blown up massively, literally blown up massively. So that was no pun intended there, Alice. I can see you shaking your head at me. But it has, and it's great. There's more people in the sport than ever, and I love that. I've been in kayaking and paddle sport since 1983, and I've never known it like this. It's brilliant, but we do want to keep them alive, and we don't want to be putting other people's lives, like Alice's and her mates, in danger, having to go and get people. So, true heroes. It's mostly SUP that's bought it. We know that. That's why if you see British Canoeing awarding body, we've created SUP Safer. There's now a new SUP Coastal Award. There's SUP Coastal Leaders. There's the SUP Safer course. There's lots of resource gone into meeting the demands of the sport, because it's up hugely. I mean, I dismissed SUP when it started. I was going, nah, that's not going to catch on, is it? That's not going to be a big thing. There'll be a few people. I mean, I've never been more wrong. I mean, I've been wrong a lot, but I've never been this wrong. That's like another level of wrong, isn't it? But it's phenomenal. It's brilliant. People are outside, they're doing exercise, they're doing adventure stuff. It's phenomenal, but they need to be doing it well. That's the thing. So I'm going to get rid of my voice for a bit and hand over to Alice. Alice is going to talk you through what the RLNI have seen and what they're doing and what the trends are and what we could be doing to move it forward. I'm going to be, what was his name? Professor Van Tam. And Alice is going to say, next slide, please, because I've got control of it. So you could be Chris Whitty. I'm not going to call you Boris Johnson. Well, thank you for that. That's
what an introduction. So we're in the, I guess, lucky position to a point, or privileged position, should I say, as the RNLI, that we kind of learn a little bit about the picture about what goes on, what the incidents are and what causes them. And that's great learning, because a bit like, when you're learning to paddle, having a coach there to sort of see what you're doing wrong and point you in the right direction is a far quicker way of developing than sort of blindly feeling your way around. So yeah, the stats are really interesting. These are last year's SUP versus kayaking for lifeboat launches, people rescued, lives saved. And by lives saved, we mean kind of like last gasp breath. There's no other way that they were getting out of there other than that intervention. Kayaking and canoeing has stayed relatively consistent over the years. Fortunately, we've seen a reduction in the number of fatalities We think that's probably due to the kind of message really landing about carrying a means of calling for help and having it on you. So when we looked, back when I started with the water safety team, at what was happening, consistently, people either weren't able to call for help themselves, they were reported overdue. And one of the alarming statistics that we have about kind of coastal fatalities is that about 75%, about 3/4 of fatalities are already dead before a lifeboat crew or before a 999 call is made or a lifeboat crew are called out. So education is the way forward to save those lives. And yeah, carrying a means of calling for help, allowing, when they get into trouble, allowing paddlers to be able to call it in and ask for assistance. Mostly we get out to paddlers and they're absolutely fine because they've been able to call for help. They've had either a personal locator beacon or a VHF on them, or at the very least a mobile phone and a waterproof pouch, and they've been able to go, I'm in trouble, can you come and pick me up? And because they tend to be wearing decent kit, either dry suits, wetsuits and buoyancy aids, they can, even if you capsize and you can't self-recover, you can hang on to your boat, you can just await assistance really. Pull you in, a little bit of embarrassment, a bit of a laugh and a cup of tea later, and everything's grand. SUP has, you can see by the participation numbers that Pete went through, these numbers have just shot up in recent years. So these are the UK, the whole of the RNLI stats, but in Wales, in 2021, 38, so we had 38 of those launches, 2 lives saved, 37 people saved. What's also kind of like slightly alarming is that already we're above that curve for this year, for 2022. As I said earlier, last weekend alone, multiple lifeboats were out over the weekend for some, quite large numbers of paddleboarding, in particular paddleboarding incidents, but also kayakers as well, off Llandudno, off the Orme. And you only have to put into Google, kayaking or paddlers rescued by the RNLI, and you just come up with a host of articles and of incidents. So you can go and look at some of those and see what's gone on yourselves. Next slide, please. So just to put some of those into context, in terms of, I've drawn out some key highlights of lessons learned. So over the last 10 years, the RNLI saved the lives of 300 paddlers, which is phenomenal. That's a lot of people going home to their families. And Helly Hansen and the RNLI have recently done a collaborative bit of work and look at the issues, particularly around the wear of personal flotation. And then in a survey, they found that 62% of those respondents didn't see things like buoyancy aids as a necessary bit of kit, which is slightly alarming. Massive increase to paddleboarders. And when you consider that we've saved 59 paddleboarders in the last 10 years, and with 44% of those, so 75% of those coming since 2020. So that just goes to show you that what Pete was talking about, those participation numbers increasing, the number of memberships that people, British Canoeing has seen, is only a small proportion of those people taking up the sport, which is, as Pete said, absolutely brilliant. But it's about understanding those sort of mindsets of those people getting involved. Some of them will naturally come our way for advice, or to some of the national governing bodies, to gain membership for advantages that membership brings you. But equally, a lot of those new participants won't, and it's a real conundrum of how we reach those with the safety education. So our launches to paddleboards went up 64% in 2021 from the previous year. So that's massive, and that trend is continuing, it would seem, this year. So a little bit of the picture there for you. So what have we learned from that? If we go to the next slide, we'll find out. So the main concerns probably won't come as any surprise to you. Offshore winds. The thing that's created a few really significant incidents in terms of lives saved or lives lost as well is that risk of entanglement. So not wearing an appropriate leash on moving water, such as an estuary. We had a very sad incident at Rock where a paddleboarder got snagged around a mooring, was unable to self-release because he was wearing an ankle leash, and sadly drowned. And then again, adverse conditions. So kind of get that slight bit of misadventure, going out to somewhere where maybe they've not seen what's around the corner, or they don't understand about the overfalls or the wave conditions and things like that, and just getting overwhelmed, unable to sort of cope with those conditions. So those are our main concerns. So that's kind of where we tend to focus our main messaging around. And the coverall for kind of those really is our kind of carrier means of calling for help message, because you can educate people as much as you like, but people will still potentially get it wrong. So if you've given people the ability to be able to call for help when they need it, you're at least providing a little bit of a safety net there. Next slide. So with that in mind, the RNLI sticks, we leave the expertise, the subject matter expertise, the training, the higher level of information up to people like Canoe Wales and British Canoeing to be able to provide training and whatnot. So we stick to some fairly basic messaging that's nice and simple, easy to remember, and concise for those that just want to, or for those that potentially that we're engaged with, we can just point them in the right direction or give them a little bit to help them get from knowing absolutely nothing to at least adopting some safe behaviours. So our 6 key messages focus around carrying a means of calling for help, and keeping it on their person. And that's, again, as I said, our sort of safety net. Of course, with sort of sea paddlers, mobile phone signal at sea is notoriously, in some of the places, especially that sea kayakers want to explore, is notoriously patchy or difficult. But, potentially off the beach where our kind of paddleboarders are going, it's pretty good these days. And everyone's got a mobile phone, so for a very inexpensive waterproof pouch, people can pop their phones in a waterproof pouch and take a means of calling for help with them. Personal flotation, we kind of touched on this one with the survey and people's attitudes towards it. It's really, really interesting for me as a kind of lifelong paddler, that people wouldn't think about personal flotation as being essential, but so that's been an eye-opener for me to learn how many people see it that way. But even in the sort of short term that I've paddled a SUP, it used to be the school of thought that if you're leashed to your SUP, that provides a huge amount of buoyancy. Therefore, you've got the ability to be able to float on your board, and it was acceptable at that time not to wear a PFD. Since we've had incidents that have been highlighted, such as the one at Rock, where we've had a fatality, it shows the real importance of being able to release from your board if you need to. And if you're released from that flotation, you need to be wearing personal flotation. So, the guidance, through organisations like British Canoeing, I did a lot of work with the safety advisory panel, and we developed the new infographic around suitable leashes and the highlighting that sort of lesson learned about the importance of personal flotation, particularly with SUP, and again, just as much so with kayakers, although traditionally people tend to wear them a little bit more with that. It probably doesn't come as a surprise to you that the importance of planning. And good planning can help prevent most incidents, as long as you know what you're kind of looking for. So planning focuses on sort of pointing people in the direction of what they need to start thinking about. So weather, tides, routes, all of those sorts of things. It doesn't necessarily give them the expertise, but it highlights that they need to think about those things, get advice, and then that kind of it sort of leads on to them going, well, if I don't know how to plan, maybe I should get some training. So that's our sort of get trained and keep current. So pointing people in the direction of those new SupSafe courses, and getting people to go through that route of coaching and learning from from other people's expertise. Wearing appropriate kit and clothing, that kind of is a really interesting one. So when Pete said about what draws your attention to whether you go and speak to somebody, one thing that always catches my eye is people stood on the edge of the beach ready to get on their paddle boards, and they're wearing jogging bottoms and a sort of mountain or sort of street type waterproof jacket. They may or may not be wearing a buoyancy aid, but they're clearly not understanding of the environment, wetsuit or some such. So kind of like that might draw my attention to sort of how novice they are, and might be in need of advice. So yeah, encouraging people to wear suitable clothing for the environment, and particularly at the beginning of the year when the waters are still cold, and particularly inland and freshwater. A lot of freshwater bodies stay very cold throughout the year, sort of below the temperatures or below 15 degrees, which is the sort of benchmark for cold water shock territory. Nice sunny day, people dress for the weather, not necessarily the water. So that can be another sign as well. And then that good old, tell somebody your plan, tell somebody where you're going, having a shore contact. If they're carrying a means of calling for help on their mobile phone, then we can point them in the direction of the RYA Safe Tracks app if you're going afloat on the sea and coastal areas. That allows you to create a paddle plan. That sends a text message to your emergency contact, and it's also monitored by the Coast Guard. So in the event of an emergency and you call for help through the app, then the Coast Guard have access to all your contact details, emergency contacts and things like that. And they also, if you're using it in track mode, they will have had your last known location as well, which is a really good function of that app. So those our key messages focus around those things. It can be, that's quite a lot potentially to get into one little conversation. So my advice there would be a couple of things that would help me tailor my conversation to the individuals in front of me at the time. One would be the amount of time that you've got, how receptive they are, but also, if they're wearing a PFD, I won't talk to them about it because they're doing it. However, I would pick some high priorities, for the day, depending on the circumstances. So Pete's example there of being at Portdavach, and somebody looking as if they're about to head right into Penmanau, then you're going to talk to them about what's out there and advise them on planning and route and so on. So prioritize things that are the biggest risk is what I'm saying. And if you can't, if they're not going to sit around and listen to you long enough to listen to a long-winded reason, give them some really quick tips and make sure they're not carrying a means of calling for help, so that if they get into trouble, they can call for help. Simple as. If you've had a conversation with somebody and you are concerned about their mindset, their attitude towards your advice, and they're going to kind of carry on regardless, because you will get those, then don't be afraid to call the Coast Guard, apprise them of the situation, and hand it over to them. They might send a a local patrol down to come and have a word, and they might have better luck with a bit of authority behind them. But at least you'd have got your conscience clear. You've tried. You've then passed it along, and don't ever feel afraid that you can't pass it on along to the beach wardens, the harbour master, the lifeguards if they're around in that area, or the Coast Guard in the event of none of those options being around, because you've then done your best by them. So that's key messages, and we'll move along to
can I just come in on that? I was just thinking about Alice, about kind of what that looks like. So if I think about how I've done it before, when I've been carrying my boat down to the beach, I've spotted people they might be in kayaks, they might be in canoes, they might be sucked, and I'm quite a chatty person, you might have guessed, but I'll go and launch like next to them and go, how you doing, and just see what the response is. And if they go, oh yeah, great, I might go, nice sups, where are you heading, where are you guys going? And if they go, oh, we're going to go straight out and see if we can find Ireland, I'm going to have a chat with them. If they go, oh, we're going to go left because we know that's really nice, or we're just going to stay in the bay, I might go, oh cool, have a nice day. But that's how I'm going to do it. I'm not going to go wading over to them going, do you know who I am? I'm an expert. You don't want to do it like that. It's finding your, like, and that works for me. That doesn't work for everybody, but often, like, if you follow me around long enough, you'll see that I want to talk to every kayaker in the world, every paddler. And that's how I kind of go, where are you heading? Nice board, nice boat. And it just gives me a little bit of a way in. And that's how I do it. I don't, like I said, I don't patrol the beach with a Canoe Wales badge or anything. But this is why we wanted to do this, because you guys know, like me and my go left, don't go right. You guys know your areas, you know your hotspots, and that's how I would come at it, and doing exactly what Alice says. Going, no point telling people that they need to wear a buoyant shade if they're already wearing one. If they've got their phone in a case in their pocket on a buoyant shade, we don't need to talk about that. But we might go, where are you heading? You're going out for the day. That's what we might be doing, and it's finding your personal style of doing it. So yeah, I'll shut up and let Alice carry on.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, that kind of that's reinforced in sort of the first part of this model. So I'm going to share with you, I guess, the handrail model that we give to our volunteers about having a safety conversation. Sometimes you go up to somebody, or you approach somebody, or you launch next to them, and you strike up a conversation, and things flow nice and easily. Sometimes things are a little bit more kind of a struggle. And this little model is just something to fall back on if you're struggling to have that safety conversation, and it's worked really well for me in the past, and it just gives a nice way to give tailored sort of safety advice. So the first A is for attention. So that kind of opening up the conversation. You don't need to wade. Don't feel that you need to wade straight in there with a safety conversation. As Pete said, kind of find out, have they been here before? Do they, what's their plans? People love talking about themselves and what they're doing. So kind of just find a nice way to engage with them. And people are much more likely to respond in a friendly way if you've approached them in a really friendly manner, rather than that kind of old classic in the films of somebody marching up to them with a wagging finger. Instantly they're going to probably get the heckles up at that approach of, of somebody that's acting like an authority figure, but without any, they've not got a harbour master's top on or anything like that. So
I do want to do that one day. I do want to do that.
Try it out, see how far you get.
I want to properly strut down the beach, wagging my finger. I want to do it.
I can imagine it happening. So the attention and the interest of building is all part of it, because this part of the conversation really helps you learn about what your tailored advice is going to be. So building up their interest and learning about what their experience level is. You might ask a few questions about what their plans are, so on, learning a little bit about them. And you can kind of subtly sort of feel your way into kind of going, actually, what are the areas? Do they know about kind of calling for help? Do they know about what's around the corner? Do they know about you know, some of the local bylaws and things like that? So, you know, boat lanes, shipping channels, all those types of things. And that allows you to sort of learn a little bit about them, their experience level, and then that gets on to the next step, which is about having the safety conversation. So learning about them allows you to then tailor the safety advice for them, because as Pete said, if they're going to pootle around in the bay, you know, there's only a relative limited amount of safety advice that you might need to give them, particularly if conditions are benign. Might be a bit different on offshore winds, and they might get blown out of that safe bay. But if it's you know, their ambitions are relatively small, and it's a day for it, fine. If it's very different to kind of any advice you might give them if they were heading off around the stacks. So make it, you know, try to help build their understanding them. So that's that desire. So when we talk about kind of carrying that means of calling for help, and putting a phone in a waterproof pouch, you know, that make them understand why they need to take their phone with them, you know, if they get into trouble, and make sure they know it needs to be in their buoyancy aid and why, you know, rather than in a dry bag on the deck or something along those lines. And you know, give them that action to take. So pop it in your buoyancy aid. Some Gen Z kind of folks might kind of be a little bit taken with the fact that they can now take photos of them out paddleboarding whilst afloat. So you get the bonus of getting them to carry a means of calling for help because they want to take their phone afloat and take photos. So that's a nice simple action to play. It's not always plain sailing. So if we go to the next slide, sometimes you might get those objections, them coming back at you with every good bit of advice that you give them, and they'll have an excuse for everything. They'll throw something back at you. This is the sort of model that we fall back on. If you can listen to their objection, and empathize with it if you can, and if there's some clear responses that you can give to address their concerns and re-educate them. So the wearing of sup leashes, for example, and having a releasable leash, and therefore the need to wear personal flotation for somebody that's not wearing a buoyancy aid going out in a sup. You know, you can kind of maybe calmly explain, yeah, I used to do that because that was the current thinking at the time, but you know, these incidents have happened. It's highlighted the need to be able to release from your board should you need to, and therefore you need to be wearing a buoyancy aid. So there's a nice simple way of kind of bringing them a bit more up to date. Some people will go, oh great, okay, I didn't understand that, thanks very much. Other people will be kind of still not very accepting of your good advice. And that's the point that I kind of call it a day and go, okay, I've tried my best. You know, they're a grown up. They're not going to want. Not everybody wants to listen to me. And don't be afraid to say okay and walk away at that point, because this is the point where I kind of go, I've tried my best. I can sleep well tonight. There we go. If we go to the next slide. So with that in mind, with that all kind of covered, I think myself and Pete would like to hear some of your experiences, and maybe if we want to chat through some scenarios and examples about how we might put this into action.
Yeah, Rob, you can mime what's happened to you if you've had any experience through the medium of dance or something. But yeah, have you know, quite last time we had like 30 people online, so there was lots of experiences, so we're not expecting that many tonight. But have you guys got any experiences or things you've, you know, just reflecting on what we've both been talking about there that spring to mind? And Rob, if you want to add anything into the chat, feel free. I'll just make sure that I can see it.
I got caught out back last year on a SUP down Cornwall with a lot of friends. Been down there with family friends who were staying down there for the week, and I'd gone out on the paddle boards just out past the headland, and there was a little bit of a swell, but it wasn't too bad. And I went round into the next bay. And it looked like a lovely. You couldn't access it, so there was nobody else. There was nobody there. It was quite a rocky kind of bay, and I thought, oh, that looks quite interesting. So I had a little paddle around, and then the waves were, the swell was kind of picking up quite a bit, and I thought, oh, it'll be fine. So I managed to get to shore, had a little explore around the rocks and the rock pools and all that. Felt great, and then turned round to the sea then and thought. The waves were probably 2 or 3 feet, and I'm on a paddleboard, and there was quite a bit. And I thought, oh, and I did get back out. I was fine. I didn't need rescuing or anything like that. I managed to get out, but it was quite a scary experience, to be honest. Because I was starting to think like I'm not going to get back out, and I'm going to get stuck. So yeah, that was the end of last summer. I haven't been out on the paddleboard since, not because it scared me, but just because I haven't really had the opportunity. But I think for me, I think a lot, particularly with life jackets and PFDs and that kind of stuff, it's like trying to get cyclists to wear helmets, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's that sort of thing where everybody knows you should have one, everybody knows they could save your life, but a lot of people are like, I'll be fine. And I did have a life jacket at the time, but going around that headland, I thought I'll be all right. But then it was that realization once I got to shore, getting back out was really tricky, to be honest. And I think that for me was a point where it was like, that wasn't a good idea. You should have looked at it. And I think if anybody else had been doing it, I would have said to him, that was a stupid thing to do. What did you do that for? But I just think for me at the time, it was like, it'll be fine. I'll be all right. But then, yeah, it turned out to be quite tricky to get back out. So I think that was a moment of realization for me, I think. Yeah.
It's good. Not everyone reflects on that, though. Some people just go, oh, that was great. And they don't even think about it afterwards. So it's good that
Yeah.
You went through that. So here's a question. What if I bumped into you on a beach, how would it have been if I'd come up to you and gone, are you sure you want to go around there? Are you sure you don't want to wear a buoyancy aid?
Yeah.
How would that have gone? How would that have gone for you?
I think I would have. I think it all depends as well on how well you. Like, I didn't know the area. I didn't know the beach. Yeah. It was probably only the first. I think it's the second time we've been down there, but obviously I didn't know it very well. So I think in those circumstances, for me, I think if somebody did come up to me and say, like, look, mate, this is not a good idea. Once you get around that headland, it's the wind is a nightmare and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think I'd be quite susceptible to that. But I think it is that kind of, and I also think with engaging with other people, I think it's kind of if you don't know the area very well yourself, I think like if you're on holiday yourself and you see somebody that's going to go out and you think, well, they haven't got PFDs, they haven't got the right kit, they haven't. I almost think you worry that they're going to turn around to you and go, "What, I've been doing this for the last 20 years. I always come out here on a Wednesday or whatever," and you kind of feel a little bit sort of, I think that could get a bit sort of you telling me what to do sort of thing. But for me, I think I'd probably be a bit more like, yeah, actually, I don't know this area very well. You obviously do, and I take that. I'd like to think I take that on board, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's some really interesting. This is almost a question for Alice and her team. I wonder how many people that get rescued are unfamiliar with the area. So they might be new to SUP, but they might know the area, or are they new to SUP and they've gone on holiday somewhere they don't know? I wonder whether that's been. I'm not expecting an answer now, Alice, because I'm just throwing you under the bus. But I just wonder, that would be an interesting one. Are people new to SUP somewhere they know, or are they somewhere they don't know and new to SUP, or whatever version you can have of that? And is that a contributing thing? I don't know. I would imagine it is.
Yeah. So I would say definitely on both counts. We only kind of like learn about that sort of thing on individual incidences through kind of word of mouth kind of conversations. We don't actually have a database that records where people are from and where they get into trouble and how familiar they are with it. Otherwise, that would be a a massive survey at the end of every shout. And I've been there when it's 2 o'clock in the morning, and kind of like if you have to fill in a massive form of a return of service, then you're going to get limited amount of engagement with that from tired crew. But so that it's really difficult, but it's definitely something that we're looking into trying to do, perhaps with one of the universities, to be able to sort of set them that challenge of kind of trying to find out some of that information for us, so that we can if it's helpful for us to base some of our interventions or activity around.
And I think we've talked, if I go on to this kind of, it lets me do it, the sort of next slide is what next. And some of the ideas that people have is better signposting some of the key hotspots, so better information boards that is clearly for people going on the water, not just you're going to see a puffin and you're going to see that. It's like, if you're going on the water, come and see this, and this tells you some information. So we're doing a little bit of work here in North Wales at the moment, trying to put a sign up is epic. You have to go through all the councils and planning permissions and all sorts of stuff, and it has to be on brand and the right size. So these things aren't quick, but what we're after, and it doesn't have to be now from you guys, is what could we do locally? Your local spots, your hot spots. What could we do? Who could we work with just to get this even bigger? At the end of this summer, we're probably going to try and get everybody that's been on this together and go, did you have to do anything? Do you wish you had? Anything like that. But what could we do better? Without wandering down beaches, wagging our fingers, which I still really want to do. I just love the idea of it. A bit Basil Foley. That's what I want to do. I might just do it one day in a beach that I'm never going to go to again. But what can we do? What next? So I'll stop sharing my screen, and if you guys do have any more thoughts, then that would be great. Other than that, this is us. So you should have my email address, because I sent out the Zoom link to everybody the other day, but that's Alice's. But you can also phone 999 and ask to speak to Alice. That's fine, isn't it, Alice? No, don't.
Don't have a direct line, but yeah.